Every election begins with a promise that power belongs to the people, a promise that every citizen has the right to choose freely. When Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed rose to power, many Ethiopians believed the country was entering a new democratic chapter. Political prisoners were released, banned political organizations returned, public debate expanded, and for millions, hope appeared possible again. At the center of this transition stood the National Election Board of Ethiopia, an institution tasked with protecting the integrity of the vote. But as the democratic process moved from national speeches into local administrative structures, many citizens began asking a difficult question. Could an election remain free when daily survival depended on cooperation with the state? In the early years of reform, Ethiopia became a symbol of political possibility. International observers spoke of transition, diplomats praised reconciliation. The government promised competitive elections and institutional independence. The National Election Board was restructured. Legal reforms were introduced. Public messaging emphasized transparency. But democratic institutions do not operate only in capital. Their true character emerges in villages, districts, schools, farms, and local offices, where ordinary citizens encounter the state directly. Long before modern elections arrived, Ethiopian communities practiced systems of collective decision-making, not through ballot boxes, but through dialogue, negotiation, social responsibility, and communal accountability. From the Gada system of the Oromo people to customary arbitration tradition, governance was often rooted in participation and social legitimacy. Citizens were not merely subjects of authority, they were participants in communal life. Voting is widely considered a democratic right. But what happens when citizens begin to experience it as an obligation tied to everyday survival? Government officials denied systematic coercion and stated that voter registration campaigns were intended to increase participation. However, interviews reveal widespread perceptions of pressure. Several individuals requested anonymity before agreeing to speak. Some feared professional consequences. Whether these fears reflected direct orders or broader political anxiety remains contested. But the emotional reality experienced by citizens was unmistakable. In the heart of Ethiopia, a new chapter was promised. A vision of democracy that would bridge the gap between ancient heritage and modern governance. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's words echoed through the halls of power, signaling a departure from the restrictive past toward a transparent electoral future. At the center of this transformation stood the National Election Board of Ethiopia, tasked with building the infrastructure of freedom across a diverse nation. Staff worked tirelessly in regional offices, preparing ballots and organizing the logistics of what was meant to be the nation's fairest vote. But as the machinery of the state moved closer to the people, the grand rhetoric of the capital began to meet the complex reality of the kebbles. In these local centers, the atmosphere shifts. Citizens wait in long lines, their faces reflecting a mix of hope, anxiety, and silent pressure. Receiving a voter card is no longer just a civic duty. For many, it feels like a high-stakes negotiation with the local authorities. Yet, Ethiopia possesses an older archive of freedom, a history of consensus that predates modern ballots and bureaucratic oversight. Under the shade of the Warka, community elders gather. This is the traditional seat of justice, where respect and dialogue guide the community. These indigenous systems, like the Gada of the Oromo, have long provided a framework for leadership and peaceful transition. Support networks like ITER demonstrate a grassroots identity built on mutual aid and local trust, standing in contrast to top-down mandates. But the modern structure has become distorted. The campaign trail often feels more like a parade of power than a contest of ideas. Behind the scenes, the interaction between officials and residents is often stern. The warmth of traditional consensus is replaced by cold demand. The voter card, meant to be a symbol of agency, is increasingly tied to the basic necessities of survival. In rural areas, the link is explicit. Access to fertilizer or essential services is often subtly conditioned on electoral participation. A local farmer speaks of the impossible choice, the freedom to choose versus the need to provide for his family's harvest. A teacher recounts the quiet warnings given in staff rooms, where job security and political loyalty are woven together. From a global perspective, the Ethiopian experiment is viewed with both hope and heavy scrutiny by the international community. The scholar gestures to the data, noting that democracy cannot be measured by the number of ballots alone, but by the absence of fear. When compared to international standards, the metrics show a significant gap between institutional procedure and grassroots reality. This erosion of trust permeates daily life. In the marketplace, conversations are hushed, and eyes are watchful. The promise of 2018 remains unfulfilled as long as the spirit of freedom is overshadowed by the weight of coercion. In the end, democracy is not found in the box, but in the dignity of the person standing before it. Ethiopian identity has long been built upon dignity, mutual respect, and community wisdom. For generations, decisions were made through dialogue, consensus, and the guidance of elders. But today, many citizens say the process surrounding elections and voter card registration no longer feels like an act of free participation. It feels like a growing obligation. In several communities, voter card registration has increasingly become linked to access to public services and daily life. Some citizens report fears that local identification cards, fertilizer distribution, or employment opportunities could become difficult to access without proof of voter registration. There was pressure. People believed life could become difficult without the voter card. Many registered because they were afraid. People became afraid even to discuss politics openly. The voter card no longer felt voluntary. Government officials maintained that voter registration campaigns were intended only to encourage civic participation. However, across multiple regions, citizens described an atmosphere of pressure, uncertainty, and fear. What concerns many observers is not simply the existence of elections, but the environment surrounding them. Democracy cannot survive through administrative pressure or fear. When institutions become connected to political expectations, citizens participate not from conviction, but from dependency. Ethiopia possesses a deeply rooted civilizational identity. Its society was historically built through community trust, consultation, and dignity. If electoral systems fail to respect those foundations, people may gradually lose confidence not only in elections, but in state institutions themselves. As the scholar explains, elections that fail to protect free civic participation risk weakening the very foundation of democracy itself. Ethiopian identity was not built through coercion, but through trust. An election should symbolize freedom. The voice of the people must be heard through dignity, not fear. The people of Ethiopia deserve the right to choose freely, to speak openly, and to participate without pressure. Democracy is not built by voter cards alone. It is built through freedom, fairness, trust, and the dignity of the people.